All right, everyone. I want to be respectful of everyone's time here today. So it's 12:01. Let's get started on CMMC. Today, we're going to be talking about the what, the so what, and the now what in regards to CMMC. Hi, everybody. In case you don't know me, my name is John O'Keefe. I am the Technology Education Jedi here at Logical Operations. I am responsible for the design, development, and some delivery of Ello's emerging technology courseware portfolio, meaning things like CMMC, cybersecurity, and data science. I'm not going to read you my resume. I'm excited to be here with you all. And if you have any questions, my email address is right there at the top of the screen. And I'm happy to answer any emails on this topic or any other topics related to emerging tech inside of Ello. From Excel all the way through CISSP and CMMC, I am happy to be the one-stop shop for any technical questions you might have. So without further ado, let's dig into this content. Number one, this is being recorded. So if you have to drop early or you're coming in late, this will be recorded and sent out to those who have registered for this. I will make these slides available as well. There's nothing truly proprietary in here. So I'll make these slides available to you. Let's get started. So CMMC, let's talk about the what. What is CMMC? We'll do that very briefly. I assume that most people who are attending this presentation probably have some good understanding of CMMC, maybe all the way up to an advanced understanding of CMMC. So we'll do what is CMMC very, very briefly. Then we're going to do so what. Now that you know what CMMC is, so what? What are you going to do with it? Well, it's a huge training opportunity. If you're attending this talk, you're likely in some sort of training capacity inside your organization, whether you do training yourself or your organization offers training. Let's talk about what a huge training opportunity CMMC is. And then now what? How do we uncover these opportunities and how do we overcome objections around some of the courses that we have to offer that deal with CMMC and CMMC related areas? Okay, what? What is this? What is CMMC? In a very brief 35,000 foot overview, let's go over what the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification is. Let's start by understanding that there are 350,000 members plus subcontractors of what's called the Defense Industrial Base. The Defense Industrial Base is just the term used for any organization that bids on and wins a contract with the Department of Defense. Now, those contracts will likely include something called Federal Contract Information, FCI, and depending on controlled unclassified information called CUI. All of these organizations have been doing this for a long time. They've been bidding on contracts. Those contracts are very lucrative. They win those contracts. Some businesses that you might not even know have these types of contracts have huge government contracts to make a part that goes inside of another part that goes inside of a casing that goes inside of a fighter jet. And they may be handling some sort of classified information. So the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification is simply the Department of Defense's way of trying to get a handle on the cybersecurity practices and policies of anyone who participates in this supply chain. Whether you make a bolt or you make an entire missile or you make a secret spy satellite, the Department of Defense wants to make sure that anyone who's participating in this supply chain has some uniform best practices in place, as well as some uniform policies and practices and procedures in place. And what they've now decided is that if you don't conform to this, if you're not participating in this, if you say, I don't want to be assessed or I don't want to be checked or whatnot, then you will soon not be eligible to bid on those lucrative contracts that are out there. So all of your customers, not all of them, but many of them participate in this ecosystem. We all know that federal contracts can be very valuable. And so we've got hundreds of thousands of organizations plus subcontractors who participate in this. So that's CMMC from a 35,000 foot level. It is the DoD's way of making sure that all of the organizations that bid on their contracts have policies and procedures in place around cybersecurity to safeguard all of this information. So it's 5 minutes on CMMC. There's a lot more to it. There's a lot of things that have changed from CMMC 1.0 to CMMC 2.0. I'm happy to discuss any of the nitty-gritty changes with any of you privately. But now that you know what it is, now that you know it exists, or maybe you already knew it exists, so what? What do we do with this information? Well, in the past, organizations have, whenever they've wanted to bid on a federal contract, they've had to answer 3 questions. The first question is can you make it? So if a contract goes out for, let's say, chairs, is your organization capable of making chairs? Yes? Okay, check. What's your price? Do you have a good price or is it astronomical? Okay, you've got a great price on these chairs per unit. Check. Can you scale? Do we need 10 chairs or do we need 10 million chairs? Are you capable of doing that? Yeah, absolutely, we can scale. Check. That was all you had to do in the past as an organization. So many of your customers have gone through this process for years and years and years. With CMMC, there's a new question that they're being asked, and this is where you have to come in to help them be able to answer this. And the new question is what CMMC level are you? Now, some organizations may already know the answer to this, but they don't know what their path forward is in terms of making sure that they're verified, making sure that they're capable of either being assessed or doing a self-assessment. So this poses a great training opportunity that previously, to about a year ago, hasn't existed at all. So this market is fairly new in terms of training. This gives you, as a training organization, an opportunity to really dig into your customer base and ask them some questions, which we'll cover in a minute, around CMMC, because they're going to have to answer this in the future when they bid on these contracts. And if they're not prepared to answer it, they may lose contracts that their organizations have had for 30, 40, 50 years. That can be devastating to a small business to lose a federal contract. So the time to ask them is now. This is your perfect sale opportunity in order to talk to your customers about CMMC. Now, the federal government spends about $1 trillion a year on these contracts. So before you start saying, yeah, I probably have some customers who participate in this, but I don't know how much they do or whatnot. When you look at the size of most of these federal contracts, even for small organizations, those numbers are very large. They can be in the millions of dollars. There are companies now that you would never guess, but who make millions and millions of dollars of profit by participating in the defense industrial base because they happen to make some form of glass that's useful in windows, but also useful in a fighter jet cockpit. So that is something that you've got to sink your teeth into. There's $1 trillion of spend out there, and your customers want to get their hands on it. And in order to do that, they have to participate in the CMMC ecosystem, and that's where you come in to help. Now, another reason you're going to want to get really excited about this is this perfect storm. We are living in a world in which cybersecurity has just reached this absolute zenith due to these 3 converging storm systems. The first converging storm system is the cybersecurity skills gap. The cybersecurity skills gap is worsening for the 6th straight year. That means there are organizations out there who are desperately looking for cybersecurity professionals and can't find people with adequate training. According to the ISSA, 70%, so almost 3/4 of all organizations are negatively impacted by this. And that's members of the defense industrial base included. And they have a lot to lose if they're hacked and lose valuable contract or unclassified or classified information. So we've got a huge cybersecurity skills gap. You probably already knew that. The second perfect storm system coming together is the Great Resignation. Now, we may all have been personally impacted by this. We may have family members who have left a job seeking a better opportunity, family members who've said, I'm not going back into the office, I want to work from home. And it is so historical. Let me give you an idea of how many people in 2021 quit their job. We were averaging 3.95 million workers quitting their job each month, according to the SHRM. Now, that is almost 60% more than were quitting their jobs in 2019. So we have this astronomical amount of people leaving their jobs. And that includes cybersecurity professionals. Cybersecurity professionals are starting to burn out. They lack adequate training in order to do the advanced threat monitoring that they're being asked to do. They're looking for less stressful opportunities. Many high-level and mid-level IT professionals are retiring. Multiple CISOs were polled by Security Week, and they have confirmed that the churn tied to the pandemic-induced resignations and exhaustion from ransomware and supply chain security crisis is absolutely real. So we've got a huge cybersecurity skills gap that exists, and that impacts the defense industrial base who need to have good cybersecurity skills. We have the Great Resignation, which means that we have people leaving these types of professions because they're not adequately trained, because companies aren't working hard on keeping them retained, and so they're going out looking to do something a little bit easier. And finally, we've got the state of the world. We've got Russia, China, North Korea, Iran. I didn't want to single out Russia, but let's talk about Russia. Immediately after the conflict broke out between Russia and Ukraine, and the United States and EU imposed sanctions, cyber attacks were observed over a 48-hour period, and they increased 800%. We are living in a world where war is going to be fought on multiple fronts, and one of them is going to be on the internet. And since the last week or so, you can't look at a news article and not see that, okay, well, Ukraine's internet is being knocked out, and now they need Starlink from Elon Musk. And now Starlink has had to shift resources to their cybersecurity department because of all of these cyber threats that are being used to attack their network to try and keep Ukraine offline. You can see that DISA has put out notice that US businesses should be on alert for cybersecurity threats coming out of Russia. All of this is happening right now. So we've got not enough people doing cybersecurity jobs. We have people leaving cybersecurity jobs, as well as people leaving other jobs looking for jobs like cybersecurity. And we basically are in the middle of an information war. So this is the perfect storm right now for any training organization to be talking about CMMC as well as cybersecurity training. So what's your opportunity here? Let's talk about the opportunity. One, I want to start with a really big number. I want to put a big number in your head. I want you to think about $1 billion, not $1 million with a B, but $1 billion. 1 million seconds is something like 16 days or something like that, where 1 billion seconds is like 57 years. That's how big the difference is between 1 million and 1 billion. There is $1 billion worth of training out there on the table. If you look at all of the people who are likely going to need CMMC training, plus you take a look at some of the areas that touch CMMC, such as organizational security, IT response, cybersecure coding, all of that adds up to about $1 billion worth of opportunity. So as sales and training organizations, you should be really excited about what's going on right now from a training perspective, because there is an opportunity to reach lots of clients about something they absolutely need. So there's 350,000 organizations globally. 60% of the defense industrial base actually operates also outside of the United States. So this is an international effort. Plus you have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of subcontractors who are all keenly interested in this cybersecurity maturity model certification. So that's just a big number right now. If you're a salesperson or you're an owner operator at a training center, you've got to be racking your brain right now thinking about who of my clients need this? Who of my clients are going to look to get something done with this within the next year? Because I guarantee everybody on this call has at least a client, if not multiple clients, who are part of the defense industrial base. So we've got 350,000 organizations. If that wasn't enough, inside of those organizations, you've got multiple people who will be looking to train on CMMC. The first is information technology and cybersecurity professionals. That's very obvious. CMMC is all about keeping our nation's infrastructure, our cyber infrastructure safe. So they're the first people you would think of. The IT department is going to need some training on this. But you've also got regulatory compliance officers and auditing professionals. You've got legal and contract professionals, and you have management who all need training on this. In many organizations, while the IT team is going to implement some of the changes needed to become CMMC compliant, it's going to be the C-suite or owners that are going to sign off on that compliance. And there has been increased pressure on those individuals to be making factual statements, to not lie and say they're compliant, to the point of now where there are heavy fines involved in if you attest that you are CMMC compliant, but then are found not to be. You're also going to have thousands and thousands of cybersecurity and technology consultants who are going to want to do something with this. They're either going to want to do it as a career, or they're going to want to become abreast of this because they deal with vendors and clients who are part of the ecosystem. Federal employees all need to be properly trained on this. And finally, there are going to be somewhere likely in the neighborhood of between 5 and 6 figures worth of assessment team members needed to carry out all these assessments, to go into organizations and look at what they're doing, to provide information to organizations to help them with their best practices, et cetera. So not only do you have 350,000 organizations, you have many people inside those organizations who are going to need this. You have people outside the DIB who are going to need this. You have federal employees who are going to need this. And you've got people who want to do this as a career who are going to need this. So right now we're looking at over $1 billion training opportunity. So that's pretty awesome. All right, what is CMMC? So what? It's a huge training opportunity. Now let's talk about what we can do to identify customers and overcome some objections when we're talking about CMMC. The first thing you're going to want to know is, do any of your customers do business with the federal government? It's a pretty easy question, right? It may be one of the first things that you ask now on a phone call if you don't already know. Hey, do you guys bid on any contracts? Is that something that you're doing or planning on doing? If you've got keystone customers that you know like to spend money with you, big customers, the other thing you can do is check out this website. Again, we're going to make sure that this is these PowerPoints are sent to you so you have access to this, but it's simply defense.gov news and contracts. And I'll show you what it looks like. So we can come in here and you can basically search an organization. So I can search New York if I want to, by a state, and it's going to show me anytime there's contracts for New York. And we can see Lockheed Martin's in here. We can see AVEX is in here. So there's all of these different contracts that are here. More specifically, what you can do with this website is search for companies, right? So we can search for Raytheon. Raytheon's a big federal contractor. We can see that they were awarded some contract, and we can come in here and we can Control F and we can do Raytheon. And we can find Raytheon Intelligence and Space also going to is awarded a $13 million cost plus fixed contract for test evaluation system engineering support, include mission planning, tests and procedures, et cetera, for the Missile Defense Agency. So if I have Raytheon as a client right now, I am calling Raytheon. If I have ACOM that was just awarded a $19 million contract, I'm calling ACOM. If I have HDT Expeditionary in Ohio, I'm calling them because they got a $24 million contract. So you can call and look on here. Here's one in New Orleans, Louisiana. Here's one in Anchorage, Alaska. This is a great site to search. So it is defense.gov news contracts, contract articles. So you can find all of the defense contracts that have been issued. It's a great tool for a salesperson. If you've got, so you can search by your location, or again, you can search by companies that you know. The second thing, of course, that you're going to do is you're going to ask, do you do business with the federal government? Have you heard of CMMC? What's really great from a sales perspective is that CMMC is doing a lot of the marketing heavy lifting for you. You may be getting customers asking you about CMMC, but more likely if you're calling your customers and you ask the simple question, have you heard of this? They're probably going to say yes. And if they haven't heard of it, you just follow up with, hey, are you guys doing any business with the federal government? And if the answer is yes, those are both great, easy opening questions to lead with. Because if they're doing business with the federal government or they've heard of CMMC, chances are they're going to want to do something with it. And that can lead you into further discussions around security courses and topics. Another great question to ask is, if you're talking to small and medium-sized customers, ask them, who does any of your auditing? Who does any of your compliance stuff? If you're a company, maybe you're not necessarily bidding on federal contracts, who's doing all your auditing? Can I talk to them? Can I find out if they know anything about CMMC, if they might need some help along those lines? Then finally, one of the best questions to ask, especially if you're getting stonewalled by the IT department, is who's responsible for signing the documentation, right? If you're going to self-attest and say that we do all these things great, whose name is going to be on that? Because that's a person you might want to talk to. In the olden days, meaning like 5 years ago, it was usually the IT manager. But now with the increased pressure on organizations to do a better job of self-attesting, it's likely going to be someone with a C or an owner in their title. And therefore, you may be able to talk to the big cheese about this, because there are significant consequences that go along with failing a self-attestation. So those are some easy ways to identify your customers. You've got a great website, some good resources, and some easy opening questions. And quite frankly, these are questions that you should be asking every single customer you talk to from now on, because this will help you identify where you need to spend your time and effort. Now, there are some good training opportunities that come out of this. Of course, the top one is CMMC official training. If you're part of what's known as a licensed training provider, an LTP, and you're offering CMMC official training, you can talk to decision makers, auditors, IT leaders, compliance around CMMC, certified CMMC professional 2.0 training. If you're not an LTP, or you also want to offer CMMC training opportunities that help but aren't directly tied to CMMC, we've got a couple other, of course, suggestions for you down there. The first is a course from CertNexus called CyberSafe, which is aimed at everyone inside an organization. It helps everyone stay safe online. 90% of cybersecurity incidences are caused by end user error. So that's one way in which you can help any organization survive this 800% rise in cybercrime that we're seeing. You've got CyberSec First Responder, which is a high stakes IT certification that actually works within the NIST framework, which is what CMMC is built off of. So organizations who want to make sure their IT staff is in a good position to help with CMMC, CFR, CyberSec First Responder, is a great class to talk to them about. And finally, you have Cyber Secure Coder, which is aimed at programmers and engineers. As we know, most businesses now use either internal or customer-facing applications. Those applications are developed by programmers and engineers, and they are the #1 security risk inside of most organizations from an application standpoint. So if you're not designing your apps well, you're not designing them with security in mind, then you're likely going to get hacked, and that can forfeit your ability to bid on federal contracts. So you've got CMMC official training if you can offer it. If you can't offer it and you want to find out how to offer it, I'm happy to help with that. You've got CyberSafe for any organization to help with that 800% risk, 800% increase in cyber attacks. You've got CyberSec First Responder for any organization or CMMC organizations to make sure that their IT staff is properly trained. And you've got Cyber Secure Coder for programmers and engineers to make sure those apps that they're developing are secure and safe. So let's close today by talking about the biggest challenges you're going to face as anyone who gets on the phone or anyone who talks to a client, the objections, right? So you're going to hear some common objections. When you find someone who's doing business with the federal government, they may jump all over CMMC or additional training opportunities, but they may also have some objections that they have. So one thing they might say to you is something along the lines of like, you know, we're not going to handle CUI, which means that we can self-attest. And self-attestment is going to be possible for about 270,000 out of the 350,000 organizations. But that doesn't mean there's no training opportunity there. First, you're going to want to let them know that although they may want to self-attest, if they do get assessed as part of the CMMC ecosystem, that assessment's going to be good for 3 years as opposed to self-attesting every 1 year. So that gives them 3 years of breathing room, 3 years where they don't have to worry about this significant audit, 3 years where they can operate normally without having to worry about anything. And then you're also going to want to let them know that if you self-attest and the federal government finds out that you either weren't truthful or your systems don't work the way you think they do, there are now significant fines in place for organizations that self-attest, get hacked, and they find out that any information was false on there. And then third, if they say, oh, we're going to self-attest, just ask them, okay, who's going to guide that process? What training do they have? Shouldn't they know CMMC 2.0 before they try and do a self-attestment for it? So all of those are good ways to kind of overcome one common objection, which is we're just going to self-attest. The second thing you're going to hear is, hey, we're already doing this. We're already really good at it. We've been doing it for years. We don't need anything additional. And, so they may say something, hey, we already followed NIST 800-171, or we're already doing this. And so you can just simply let them know, making sure that you've got this training for the low cost that it is, compared to how much you probably make in federal contracts is totally worth it. Because one mistake can cause to a revocation of a contract. One cybersecurity breach can cause a revocation of a contract. So in the olden days, we kind of overlooked all of this, but under CMMC 2.0, everything's going to be a little bit stricter. So the average cost for CMMC training pales in comparison with the average contract. So this is not the time to cheap out. This is the time to send your people to get proper training, to get engaged. I've got somebody in the chat, blah, blah, blah. I'll read that question in a second. Now, you're going to hear some common objections for CyberSafe as well. CyberSafe is something you should be talking to any organization about. CyberSafe is an end user awareness class. It's great as part of the defense industrial base because, again, having something as simple as this can help them kind of check off a box on their self-assessment or on their CMMC assessment. Some common objections you're going to hear when talking about CyberSafe is, number one, we already have our IT team do that. And so you're going to want to ask a couple of follow-up questions. Is that the best use of your IT team's time, right? So the best use of their time. Do you want to spend Do you want to have your IT team running around training Jack and Bob and Jill on how to not click on malware? Or do you want them doing their job, right? So that's number one. Two, when you have an IT person go ahead and train a couple of people, then train a couple of other people, that is not necessarily creating a good training experience for all. How can you make sure all users are getting a quality training experience? And then how are you going to validate that they've retained anything? CyberSafe has a certification and badge at the end of the class. So any HR or IT leader can validate that all employees have become cyber safe, which is a really awesome thing. So this is a great way to take pressure off the IT team, make sure that everyone's getting good basic fundamental training, and make sure that that training has been validated. Now, if the budget time conversation comes up, CyberSafe is quick. It can be done in an hour. It's inexpensive. But the real point I'd like to make is CyberSafe is all about keeping an organization safe, and you spend more money alleviating cybersecurity risks and dealing with breaches and dealing with the time of people being locked out of their computers or having your systems go down. You spend way more per year on that than you will on CyberSafe. You can alleviate up to 90% of cybersecurity incidences just by having everyone be safe online. Now, another class, again, that you can offer is CFR and CSC, CyberSec First Responder and Cybersecure Coder. These are great additional certifications for the IT staff. They go along with CMMC really well. So while you're talking about CMMC and getting people excited, you can be talking about CyberSafe, you can be talking about CFR and CSC. Now, oftentimes you're going to hear this objection from your cybersecurity contacts. You're going to hear, we don't need any more training. We don't have time for it. We don't need any more IT certifications. So some great things to let them know. Number one, CFR is the only certification out there that touches on all 5 security domains inside of NIST 800-171. The other certifications out there do not do that. And so if they're considering any sort of cybersecurity maturity model certification, or they want to be part of that ecosystem, CFR is the best certification that their IT staff can have to make sure that they are following all of the policies and procedures that make up CMMC. The other thing you can let them know is application security is actually ranked #1 when it comes to concern for both consumers and the DoD. The DoD is their #1 concern right now is with applications being built and being built insecurely. And same thing with consumers. Consumers worry about the apps on their phone and what information they're giving away, or what happens if an app gets hacked. That's what they worry about. So making sure that those apps are secure with something like Cybersecure Coder, that is a great way to talk to businesses about this. The security incidents have grown by 800% in the past few weeks. Are you really prepared? I think that's a fair question to ask any organization. If they're saying, we don't have time for this right now, I don't see how you don't have time for it. Because with all of these cyber threats, you're just going to get attacked. And if your people aren't prepared, then you could be in a world of trouble. And finally, better security on application designs leads to just lower cost. If somebody says to you, yeah, our programmers are really good at that, just ask them, how many times during a development lifecycle have you ever had to restart because of a security issue? And they're going to think about it and they're going to say, oh, I guess you're right. And the last thing, skilled up employees who feel as though an organization has invested in them are less likely to resign during the Great Resignation. So that's something that you can just put to all of your customers right now. If you're not doing training, and I know it's hard because I know that you're short-staffed, it's tough to send Tim and Joe to a 5-day training, but let's work through it. Let's figure it out, because Tim and Joe are going to quit at some point if they don't feel appreciated. And training is one of the ways in which employees feel the most appreciated. Finally, just so we're clear, I want to let you know that what we've talked about today includes a course called CMMC CCP, which can only be offered by LTPs underneath this umbrella organization called CMMC AB, the accreditation board. If you are currently in LTP, congratulations. Logical Operations is working on our CMMC 2.0 courseware with the targeted date of sometime, hopefully in April, depending on when we get the resources from the AB. If you are currently not an LTP, but you're saying to yourself, this sounds like something I really want to deliver, then you can get in contact with me and I'm happy to point you in the right direction. If you're interested in offering the other courses, CyberSafe, CyberSec First Responder, or CyberSecure Coder, you can also contact me and I can point you in the right direction of becoming a CertNexus ATP so you can deliver all of that content as well. A lot of great training opportunities out here for any organization that wants to get involved. So what's next? Email me at jedijohn@logicaloperations.com with any questions you have. I see one question in the chat from Tim that I'm going to answer. And then you can also every month check out our Logically Speaking. Next month, we're going to be talking again about cybersecurity in a similar vein to what we just did, but it's tough not to talk about it because there's so much going on in cybersecurity right now. And then we will have a customer-facing CMMC presentation that will present some of this information and some other information to any of your customers out there who you'd like to attend. That'll be on 3/22, which is 2 weeks from today. If you're interested in having your customers attend, we will be sending out a follow-up email to this with information on how to have them register for that talk. So hopefully they can come, listen to me, get excited about CMMC, and go back to you and say, hey, Tim, what's this CMMC all about? I need to train on it. And then Tim can, of course, take 40 registrations for a class, get excited, and do a happy dance around the office. All right, we're done here, a little over time, but let me read a question that came into the chat from Tim Korn. Hi, John. I could be wrong here, but I understood before there was what we were calling in training CMMC 1.0, and then there was an overhaul of the standards that changed and led people thinking not every DoD contractor and some training apps kind of dried up because of the standard changes. Can you speak on the changes between 1.0 and 2.0, and will that result in these opportunities coming back around? Sure. So originally, every one of the 350,000 members of the defense industrial base needed to be assessed by a professional assessor. Now, many of them, about 250,000-ish, will be able to what we call self-attest, which is a process that they've been doing for years before this. However, in recognition that this isn't a great policy, the Defense Department has upped the ante on what happens if you self-attest and quote unquote lie or quote unquote, fake the assessment. So there's much more significant punishment that comes around with doing self-attestation and being wrong about it. So many organizations that have been self-attesting will look at that and say, hey, we should probably do some training around that. Two, there was a thought for a while that they were going to bifurcate level 2, and that has basically disappeared. So there's still about 80 to 100,000 organizations that require official CMMC training that need to be assessed. And then there's about 250,000 organizations that'll be doing self-assessment, but with all of what's going on in the world, will likely be wanting to make sure that they don't make any mistakes, because a mistake can cost you a federal contract. And as you saw when I was scrolling through those federal contracts, it's not like they're for $100, right? 25 million, 14 million, 18 million, 32 million. These are big numbers for them. So any organization can lose a contract if they aren't compliant with inside of this ecosystem. So some changes have happened, but what's actually really great about CMMC 2.0 is it's more accessible. CMMC 2.0 training requires less previous years of IT experience. It's more accessible for students to get into. It's going to be easier for smaller organizations to find a candidate to go take. Previously, they were kind of saying they wanted somebody who had CISSP experience. And for those of you who know, that's a fairly far down the line certification. And now they're looking at more A+, Net Plus level of experience, which, as you know, is entry level. So to Tim's point, a lot of smaller organizations can self-attest, but the punishments have gotten more severe if they're wrong. The training has become more accessible so they can find employees to do it. And the world that we live in is likely going to push any organization to think about cybersecurity first, last, and always. Thanks for the great question, Tim. If there are no other questions, then I'm going to send this presentation out, or Vanessa's going to send it out. So you have access to this deck. You can email me with any questions. And I am excited to help any of you on your CMMC journey to selling, or if you're looking at those other cybersecurity courses, I am happy to get you set up, talk to you about them, and make sure that you can get those to your clients as well. So with that, we're done. Tech Talk Tuesday is officially closed, and I will see all of you hopefully in a couple of weeks. Take care.